one day that you should be granted at least one day excused absence to do civic engagement, so long as it's not a limiting rule. For example, I could see cases where, for example, Mr. Hills might approve several days of civic engagement. And it also seems odd to me. I mean, at least one of the speakers and one of my kids spent a fair amount of time at Model UN recently, and so, I'm not sure that going to Model UN is any more valuable than going to Capitol Hill and making those arguments for real. So all that's to say, I think the work session is the right approach, but I'd be happy to follow the will of the board on whether, given the input we had, we want to create a temporary rule for at least one day of civic engagement.
Ms. Downs.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. I would second what Mr. Reidinger suggested. I think a work session would be valuable. For example, I don't know, would this policy also apply to MEH students? And I'm not sure if we talked about that. And if it does, that's, to me, very different. And I think parents could be concerned that those students are younger. And I just think that there are just some things we should talk about and work through and make sure we have all the input from the administration. But I do agree with Mr. Reidinger that, it's the whole idea of it. Of course, I'm very supportive of that. So if there is maybe something temporarily we could do for the spring and then dive into it a little deeper.
And I would agree as well. I think we definitely should do a temporary policy to give the students the opportunity to take advantage of the many ways that they can participate in some type of civic activity. I do, kind of what Ms. Downs just mentioned, I would potentially, for right now, limit it to the high school students. But within that work session and coming up with a more bigger picture policy for that, I think then we can look into a little bit more of adding MEH, because I know those kids there are several of those students who are already thinking civic minded as well, and may want to participate in those things as well. But I think we need to think a little bit more about those students when it comes to that.
Dr. Newman.
And I don't mean to cut the communication off so you guys can continue. I just wanted to make sure that currently anytime there is an absence, whether it's at elementary, middle, or high school, the parent still needs to call in and tell the school that they're not going to be there. So knowing that, it still would be a parent decision whether or not their student would be absent for that civic engagement. So for example, if it was a middle school student and you wanted to do something temporary, the parent would call and say, my child is going to be out today. Attendance line would say why, and the parent would say civic engagement, and that would be it. And I think there is some value, frankly, not only in continuing with that policy that parents call, but making it that simple to get away from any kind of judgment, any kind of, and sort of taking the administrators out of the decision-making process. And so, for example, in our neighboring district, they've simply added a checkbox. Is this for illness? Is this for a death in the family? Is this for civic engagement? Whatever the case may be. And then we would go through that. The other part of it that I just would need to get clear about, and part of the reason that I want to make sure that we at least do, at some point, do a work session, even if we have an intermediate policy, is the tracking of that. So how many times has a student put in for civic engagement? Because if we're not careful, and not thoughtful about it, a parent could put in 3 or 4 days for their student. So I know that surrounding jurisdictions have said 1 day. And by the way, I think it's a great idea. So I want to put that out there and would support our students engaging in civic engagement for 1 day of excused absence per year. But I just want to make sure we do it right.
Mr. Reidinger.
If I might suggest a path forward, perhaps we should return to this at the next meeting, and Dr. Noonan can speak a little bit more to the school administrators, particularly the principals at MEH and GMHS, about what the practice is around civic engagement, And it may be that we can wait on a work session and simply just have a resolution about the sense of the board that, appropriate absences for civic engagement are already and would be approved, and that would serve in an interim capacity until we were able to do a full work session. But it would make sense to me to at least hear what Dr. Noonan's feedback was after speaking to the school administrators to understand the degree of urgency. I think there's a degree of urgency, and we want to address it simply because we had such a powerful set of requests from our students, and I think we have a responsibility to move on that. But we ought to move in the right way, and perhaps we should get a little bit more information first.
Ms. Dimick, or Ms. Singhvi, I'd be open to hear your thoughts.
I guess I would like to find a way to move forward with something that students could use, and I do not want it to be limited to the high school.
Ms. Singhvi.
I would just say that since I know there are a lot of like events coming up, that if we could do this as soon as possible and like have a policy drafted before the next work session or meeting, that would be great. And I know like a lot of people are waiting on this to happen, have been waiting for a long time. And I also would think that, I think Fairfax did it from 7th to 12th grade, I'm pretty sure is the policy. So I think I would say that if that's working out for them, then we should also do something similar here. Yeah.
Okay. Well, the sense I'm hearing is there's support for an interim action of some sort, and Mr. Reidinger suggested a sort of a sense of the board resolution after a bit more information at our meeting in March. And then a deeper dive in a work session, perhaps associated with gathering information for the full revision of the attendance policy in the next couple of months, perhaps. Something along those lines, anyway. But I'm hearing the idea that at least a temporary action set up for March along the lines of some sort of a sense of the board resolution that can be used to give guidance would be kind of the sense I'm getting from everyone. I'm seeing lots of nods and no disagreement with that, so I think we should probably plan on something along those lines. Are there other future agenda items? Mr. Reidinger.
Well, keeping with the discussion of issues that were raised in public comment, I think it would be appropriate for us as a board to look again at what we can do around gun safety and school safety. That's a key issue for us. Mr. Dakin, as I'm sure everyone knows, has been a tireless advocate for gun safety and preventing school violence. I think the specific suggestion that's been made about whether to at least have, to do something around informing parents about the need to lock up guns in the home through InfoSnap or otherwise is a worthwhile topic to discuss. It's fairly action-oriented and something within our scope of responsibility. So I think sort of talking through that at a work session would make a lot of sense, preparatory to the opening up of InfoSnap, if that's possible, for the next calendar year. Sorry, the next school year.
This leads to a question of what is that opening look like?
It's coming quickly. Actually, we're revising the handbook that goes online now, and registration will begin within about the next month. So I understand what your desires are, and why don't we go back and have an internal conversation about how we might be able to sort of think this through and perhaps bring a suggestion to the board at the next meeting with respect to a path forward around whether it's gun safety, whether it's health and wellness, whether it's sort of, I'm sort of envisioning a broad list of really important things to remind parents about as you're registering your kids for school and getting ready for the coming year. Here are 5 to 7 things you probably should keep in mind, and perhaps that's one of them.
And if I'm remembering the documentation that Mr. Dakin brought forward, there's been a couple of other divisions recently that have adopted a policy that is generally that sort of information transfer, not requiring any particular action other than the guidance to the school administration to develop information to share with the parents about the importance of gun safety. That's something that's potentially something we can do without needing any additional legal authority, unlike some of the other ideas that had previously been brought up, I think. So if there, I find myself in agreement that that's something that we really should take a look at, and that's something we could consider, but I would need some more information on how that would actually potentially work here. I don't know what others think about that. Ms. Downs.
Thank you. I agree, and I think it speaks to building a caring community and caring culture and looking at the whole student. So I agree.
Mr. Webb.
I just have a quick question. Are other school divisions in this region or any other places do such things of within the what Mr. Dakin is kind of talking about potentially us doing? Just more of a informational question than anything. It's something that I would fully support, but I was just wondering if neighboring jurisdictions and or other states and cities may be doing something similar.
I'd need to look into that.
So the sense I have looking at the table is this is a topic we definitely would like to talk about at an upcoming work session. But exactly when, given that end of March is the timeline for InfoSnap, maybe at least when we meet again next, you could give us some more information would be helpful, I think.
Happy to do so.
Okay. All right. Are there any other future agenda items that anyone would like to propose? All right, not seeing any at the moment. We will move on then to 11.01, our superintendent's report, and Dr. Noonan.
Thank you. A couple of announcements. Sort of the way I've been doing this is going school to school. And I'll start here with Jesse Thackeray, the lottery interest forms for tuition-paying students. We received 45 respondents. Our team has randomly selected those who can apply, and those who can apply have been notified at this point. Everyone else is on the waiting list, and the final number of tuition-paying peers that we accept depends on the number of special education ESOL and ESY students that we get. So they get precedence. We are looking forward to Read Across America on March 2nd. We hope that all of you can participate as a guest reader, and we'll get some information out to you about that. At Mount Daniel, we celebrated the 100th day of school on February 13th. I don't know if any of you have ever participated in the 100th day of school at Mount Daniel, but it's one of the funniest days of the year where the little kindergartners come dressed up like 85-year-olds with, walkers and canes and the like. But it was great to see. Family Steam Night was last Thursday at Thomas Jefferson, and a big shout out to our amazing Tosin Editoro. She's been highlighted here a couple of times at the school board for her incredible work, and that work, along with the great support from the 5th grade students and community partners and parents, really made the Steam Night excellent. Mary Ellen Henderson, if you haven't had a chance to get your tickets to Mary Poppins, now is the time to get your tickets for Mary Poppins. And if you go, you're going to have a supercalifragilisticexpialidocious time. I promise you that. And if you go on Thursday, you never know who you might see in the show. So I just kind of leave it at that. It is going to be taking place Thursday, Friday, Saturday in the GMHS auditorium. And a huge shout out to Lisa Gross, Miss G, for her incredible work with the drama students, and to Miss Carpel as well, the outstanding choral director at Henderson. George Mason High School this year saw the most students ever honored in the District 10 Honors Band, and we're really proud of the work that they've done, those students. Placement in the 3 ensembles in the department, ensembles depended upon a highly challenging audition comprised of scales, sight reading, and prepared songs. Students auditioned into those 3 bands, 1 for middle school and 2 for high school students. And the performance at Hayfield Elementary with their peers from other schools is amazing. The MYP project is coming up. For those of you that haven't had an opportunity to be part of that, on March 11th is really an outstanding day. George Mason is looking for community judges to visit and chat with students about their projects. So if you're available between 12 and 2 on March 11th, it's a great opportunity to see IB in action for all of our students in the MYP program. This year, I wanted just to give some information about the staff intent to return. I shared some of this with you